Hi guys, welcome to this video for Return to Earth. This one's going to be a playthrough video. What we're going to do is we're going to go through try and cover all the different elements of the game. We're going to show different aspects of what you need to do in it. I'm going to probably aim for about half-hour video. It could go on a bit longer. If you didn't see the setup video, I recommend watching that first. It shows you how we got to this stage with the board being set up, and I explained some of the components and so forth. The objective of this game is going to be a missions game. We explained how this worked at the end of the setup video, so you can check that out. We're going to do I'm going to try and do 3 missions for this video. But it will be a 12 mission game, and I'll probably carry on and play the game afterwards. I'm going to use the rule book and check up rules periodically. There's going to be a bit of downtime, so I apologise for that. I'll try and edit them out in the final cut of this video, but it's very time consuming, so you might find that I've missed a few here and there. So I do apologise for that. Also, I'm using a lamp to try and improve the video quality, and I've got a bit of glare on this piece here, so you can't actually see the statistics on that, and I'll explain if we go to that place there. I'll try and give you a bit more information about what I'm doing over there. Other than that, I think we're good to go. I've got a glass of water here, so I'll be periodically gulping water down, and you'll hear that, and I apologise for that. I'm not a professional games reviewer, so you'll have to bear with. Okay, so what we're going to do is I will go through each stage of a turn one at a time through the first turn that we play, and then I'll assume that you understand what I'm doing in the playthrough until new things crop up. So we'll start off with rounds and turns. So each round, all players that are playing will get to take a turn. So one player takes a turn, then it moves to the next player and they take a turn, and so forth. What we are doing, because we're only a solo player, there's only going to be one person taking a turn, obviously, and that will begin with the first player. So we've got a turn sequence here on the board, and the first part of the turn sequence is galactic events, and it's for the first player only. So when the second player takes their turn, they do not do the galactic events. And what you do is, starting off, number 1, we're going to move the time track 1 space along the time track. If it's a yellow space, we don't do anything. So we'll leave that for now, and we'll get on to what happens as we move along this track as to what these different things we'll be doing. The next thing is movement. Now, movement plays a big part in the game. There's different options that you've got to move. I'm going to go through them. There's if you're on a space or you move onto a space with an NPC, then you need to halt movement and deal with that NPC. And what we'll do is, at some stage, we'll deliberately try and get onto a place with an NPC, or it might crop up randomly, and then we'll go through what happens when you encounter an NPC at that stage. The next thing that you can do is ship movement. So basically, as you move around the board, you can move to any space that's connecting. You can move diagonally or across these borders, and what will happen is that each time you move to a space, you'll burn 1 fuel. So each time we move, you move your piece, you burn 1 fuel. When you move on your first movement in the turn, you do not need to make a navigation roll, but any other movements in the same turn, you will need to make a navigation roll test. So navigation tests are basically, you look to see what the navigation number is from your space that you're currently in, and then you need to roll that value or below. So these navigation numbers are these green numbers here on the board. So in this particular case, if I wanted to move to another space, I would have to roll 3 or less on a d6. And there's certain things that you can do. You can get yourself some crew to help out with that, and improve your chances. Also, the green player, once per turn, may re-roll a navigation check. So you've always got, as a green player, you've always got that option, and that's a special rule for the green player only. So as you move, you make your navigation roll, you move, you burn 1 fuel, you move that on your fuel marker. Once per turn you can make a hyper jump, and how you do that is you make a navigation roll. So if we're in that space, we would make a navigation roll, and then we would move 3 spaces. So we make a navigation roll, if it fails or passes we still move 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3, and then what would happen then is if we failed the check, our ship would suffer some random damage because the hyper jump went a bit wrong, and so we would work on this, the random damage section of the board here, which is also in the rule book, so I'll show you a close-up of that and then we explain how that works. So the random damage table, what happens with that is we look at our ship's defence. Let me try and hold that a bit better. Okay, so we would find our ship's defence value, which is on our ship's track over here. At the moment we're at number 2 for defence, and what we would do is we would roll the red die, and then you would cross-reference the ship's defence with the number that you rolled. So let's roll. So we've rolled a 2, so we would look down to number to defence 2, and it would say we would take 20% damage. So by taking 20% damage, in effect you're moving this 2 spaces, 1, 2, so that we've gone from 100% to 80% on our ship's log for our shields value. So that's how random damage works. And again, there's times during the game with certain tech that you might be able to avoid taking some of that random damage. So that's how hyper jump works. If we end our space, if we end a turn during a movement, if we was to move, say, to a resource space, a resource token, a space with a resource token, then what we get to do is we can choose to make a basic mining or collecting operation, or a advanced mining and collecting operation. So when you're at places with ore, titanium and ore, you are doing a mining operation, and when you're at spaces with plasma and space junk, you're doing a collecting process. So you get to choose. If you do a basic mining, you don't need to make any checks or rolls, you just simply add 1 unit of the resource that matches the icon, so in that case it would be titanium, and you gain 1 titanium. If you want to do an advanced mining operation, and again there's tech that can help you with this, you roll 4d6 and you call out a number between 1 and 6, and if you roll that number you've failed. So if let's say I chose number 1, I'm going to roll the dice, and as long as I haven't rolled a 1, I've made a successful mining operation. I get to add 4 units of that type of resource, so I would get 4 titanium for that. Had I failed, then I wouldn't get any at all, and also I would suffer some random damage because the mining operation went wrong. So that's how mining and collecting works. Missions. During the course of the game you will pick up missions, which is another major part of this game, is the mission cards, and they tell you to go to certain sectors and perform certain tasks and so forth. This one says at sector E4 risk 5 and 6. So while I'm moving around the galaxy, moving to different places, I could go to a place where my mission needed to be performed. I could go there, deal with the mission card, and we'll explain that in a minute, what risk 5 and 6 does when we attempt to do this mission. Perform whatever was required for the mission, and then we can carry on moving. So performing a mission it can be done on the go, it doesn't stop your movement. Now the next thing is docking and departure. So basically all these central cores here have all got arrows, not the asteroids, but all these others have got approach arrows and departure arrows. I'll show you on the gas planet. It's a little red arrow with a black arrow pointing in the opposite way to show that you can go to and from that particular planet. So in that case, if we wanted to enter the gas planet, we would need to use the space that was adjacent to that arrow, and you basically move into there. Now, you can't hyper jump in or out of a planetary core, so when you're in these spaces you can't make a hyper jump test. Once you've in any of the sector spaces, you can make a hyper jump test, and if you by landing in a central core, bar the collapsing stars, which we'll talk about in a moment, it ends your movement, and so then you perform a planetary phase if you're at one of these 6 planets, which have got all these different names and letters on them. Let's have a look. Drifting. If you run out of fuel, you can drift. If you've got fuel on board, you cannot drift. To drift, you move one space in any direction and then you end your movement. If you're you can drift into a planetary core and you can drift out of a planetary core. You can't when you're in the gas planet, there's a special rule for the gas planet. Burning fuel around the gas planet will require you to take random damage. So this is the only sector where you can choose deliberately to not burn any fuel and just perform a drift action. And again, you just move one space and then that's the end of your turn. So moving around this gas planet is going to be very, very slowly. You can decide to burn fuel around the gas planet if you so wish, but you're going to be taking random damage. And again, I think there's some tech. I think we put some tech in so that you can block yourself from taking that random damage. So it's worth looking at all your tech options and your crew and that to see how you can avoid and gain benefits to do certain things in the game. So we've done the fuel consumption, we've done the hyper jump, we've done mining and collecting missions, we've done interaction. In a multiplayer game, if you land on a space with another player, you get to fight, to discuss tactics and make up deals and so forth. So you could form strategies with other players. You can swap around pieces of passengers that are on board and anything that's in your hold and so forth, and you can basically just negotiate with them all sorts of deals that you might wish to do. Obviously in a single player you can't do that, so that's how that works. And then if you end your movement, it says if you end your movement, can take no further action such as mining or collecting resources, landing on a planet, or during your turn you've performed part of a mission, you may encounter an event. So basically, if you haven't done a mission during your turn and you've landed and you've ended your turn in any space that you can't perform any other type of action, there's a possibility for an event. What you do is you turn over these mission cards looking and if it's got an event icon in this bottom left hand corner, and I'll try and find one that has, I don't want to, there's one there, it's got a number below at the very bottom of that icon. In this case it's 4. So what you would do is you would have an encounter 4 and you look that up on the back of the rule book and you find number 4, and it says you're attacked by a fleet of space pirates and a fierce battle ensues. Sadly, one of your crew members dies in the attack before you manage to escape. Remove 1 crew. And there's a clause there. It says you must always try to pay the penalty shown, however you cannot be ignored. So if you didn't have any crew on board, then you just simply ignore that event, but if you did, you would actually lose 1 crew member. You'd have to remove them from your crew. Okay, so I think that covers movement. What we're going to do is there's the planet phase follows movement, and what we'll do is we'll go through the planet phase when I actually land on a planet, but for now what we're going to do is we're going to process the movement. So I'll reset myself back, and now I think it's probably a good time to explain these mission cards, because I'm going to perform this mission virtually next. So I'll read out what it says. It's called Back to His Future. It's got a reward of $105. It's a red one, so it means that if I perform it correctly, I'm going to have to move my reputation marker 1 space in the direction of the piracy. And it says at sector E4 risk 5-6. So what that means is that all these different sectors have all got some form of coding to them. So in this case, Cyphus is C, and it's got a big C on there to make it blatantly clear to you. But basically, the name of the planet also is the first letter of the name of the planet is also referenced as the sector. So everything in that sector is called C. So when you're told to go to C4, it's telling you need to go to this sector, and you need to go to this system, and you need to go to the sector 4. So it will say C4, and it's telling you to go to this space here. Around all the central cores, there's these different numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And when it says go to C4, you find the planet C, which is this, and the sector 4, and then you need to go to that and perform something that it says on the mission card. It might tell you to, when you get to C4, to go to another sector, and then another sector to complete the mission, and so forth. So you just follow the instructions that are in white on the mission card. I'll read out what it says. Okay, so it says, Back to His Future. A guy approaches and asks if you want to make some quick cash. He says he is from the future and has a data chip listing winners of the Aclara Hypod races for the next 50 years. All he wants is a small amount of cash to buy some plutonium for his time travelling vehicle to get him back to the future. Okay, so, and then it says, the instruction says at sector E4 risk 5 and 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to move, and the reason why I put myself at the start of the game in the Aclara planet was so that I can move to E4 straight away and perform this mission. So this mission really is, at this stage for me, is a bit of a gamble. If I pass it, I get $105 and 1 space reputation, 1 pirate reputation. If I fail it, I take 1 pirate piracy reputation, and I'm also going to have a $20 fine. And so I've only got $30, so it's a bit of a risk. If I go ahead and do this and I fail, I'm going to lose $20 in the form of a fine. If I actually are quite lucky, then I'm going to get $105, which is going to be a big boost to me so early on in the game. So I'm going to take a calculated risk. What you do is, when you do a mission that's got a risk involved, they give you numbers from 4 to 6. In this case, it's 5 and 6. And what that's telling you to do is you've got to roll 4d6. And you've got to make sure that one of those die is a 5 and a 6 in this case. So I'm going to roll these, and I need to roll a 5 or 6. Okay, so I've done it in this particular case. So I get a 5. I've made the roll. So I get $105. So I'm going to take 2 50s and a 5. And then this card here tells me that I need to gain 1 piracy. And then I turn that over, and that goes towards my 12 missions that I need to do to complete the to win at the game. So that's 1 mission down. Had I failed it, I would discard the mission card to the discard pile, and I wouldn't get to keep it. I wouldn't get to try and re-perform it either. So you get 1 crack at the missions. Right, next what I'm going to do, I'm still during my movement phase, so I'm actually going to try and move to this space here, and I want to try and go for some mining. So I should have burnt 1 fuel, sorry, moving from there to there, so I've corrected that, and now I'm going to burn another fuel, and I'm going to attempt to move into that space. So I need to roll 3 or less with 1 die. Okay, so I've done that, so I get to move here, and now I'm going to perform that mining test. So to do a mining test, what you need to do is you need to roll 4d6, call out a number. This is going to be an advanced mining test. I need to roll the number that I call. I don't want to roll the number that I call out. So in this instance, I'm going to call out number 3. And you need a number between 1 and 6. So as long as I don't roll a 3, I'm okay. Okay, and I haven't. So I've managed to gather 4 titanium. Okay, had I rolled a 3, I would have taken some damage and I wouldn't get to have gained that titanium. Okay, and that ended my movement. Your hold value is here, so I've got a hold value of 5, so I can have one. I can collect one more item into my hold, because currently I've got 4 in there. So you need to observe your limitations that is listed under your ship token on the ship track. Okay, so that ends my movement. Because we were not at a planet, that means we skip the planet phase and the action phase, and now we're on to the NPC movement. So the way the NPC movement works is in a multiplayer game there's going to be potentially 4 different NPC ships. So what you would do is you would choose one NPC ship that hasn't been moved, and then you would roll for a random sector. So I'll go into how the random sector works. I think we've got a chart for that in the rule book. So the random sector chart, which is this section here, you choose your NPC. We've only got one, so we're going to choose this NPC, and then we're going to roll a red and a blue die, and we've got a red 6 and a blue 1. So you look up 6 and 1, 6 on the red column, 1 on the blue row, and we see F1. So that means that that NPC ship moves to F1, which is over here. So we just move that over. If we're using the upgrade pack, what we do is we drop one of our player rings over that NPC ship to say that it's been moved, and the next turn of the next player, when they get to this stage and they're going to be moving the NPC ship, they can't choose one that's already moved. If you're using just the cardboard resources, the cardboard NPC ships, in effect you would place one of your player markers underneath that ship to say that it's been moved, and that's an indication that the other players can't choose that NPC ship. So because we're using the upgrade pack, we place our ring over it, and that ends the NPC phase, and then we go to the round cleanup phase, which is the last player to take a turn. So once all the other players have actually performed their turn, the very last player will then do the round clear up. So in a single player it doesn't really matter, but we'll discuss it for the purpose of people playing more than one player. So I'll read out what it says a bit. So the round cleanup: when the last player has taken their turn, the player holding the first player token counts up all of the markers under the NPC pawns from the board and returns them to the players, and then passes the first token to the player on his left. So as the first player, I would remove all the rings off of all the NPC players, return them to the players, and then I would pass the first player token to my left, and that ends the first turn. Okay, so we're going to start turn 2. So the galactic event, I'm going to move the token to the second space. I'm going to, now what you do is, because it's a blue space, you find the galactic event card that's linked to this space, and we flip it over. and we can see the card with some details on there, and it basically puts in a rule in place that's going to affect everything that could affect things that are going on in the galaxy. So this one's called Space Pirates, and it says all NPC ships are space pirates and will always attack any player in its sector. So when you move, or when you start your turn and you've got an NPC ship in your space, or you move into a space with an NPC ship, you get a choice of whether to attack or not. And then if you decide not to attack the NPC ship, then they may or may not attack you. There's rules for that, and we'll go into that when we land there. But all the while that card is in place, no sooner than you move into a space with an NPC, it's going to actually attack you. So it takes our choice of being able to decide whether to attack or not out of the equation. So if there's a lot more NPCs in the game, it does start to fill up the board with NPC ships and make moving around a bit more difficult. In a single player game, it's a bit easier, and so we might not have to worry about that too much while we're playing. Okay, so that's how they work. When you eventually get around, we probably won't get to these red spaces in this video, but when you do get around to these red spaces, what they mean is that card then gets flipped back over, and it would no longer be enforced, those rules that are on that card. So you at the moment would have to go all 18 turns before that, before the NPC ships stop becoming space pirates. Okay, so that was that. Now we're going to do our movement. I'm actually going to move back to the planet Aclara, so I'm going to move one space. That was my free move without the navigation test, and then I need to make a navigation test. Now what you'll find is that when you fail a navigation test, you move anyway. So when you're going to take your last move into a planet port, there's no need to actually make that navigation test, because if you fail it or not, you're just going to move one space and then end your move anyway. So I hope that makes sense. But basically, because my last move is going to be into there, I just need to spend the fuel. Okay, right, so now I'm there, that begins the planet phase, and this is another big part of the game. As well as the mission cards, you've got a big function to do while you're at planets, so we'll go through those. I'm going to use I know the rules, but I'm going to use the rule book just so I get it exactly right and I don't make any tiny little errors. Okay, so when you're in the planet phase, you begin here in the rule book, and there's a list of options to actually get you into the port, and it all depends on things like if you want to pay a docking fee or whether you want to try and avoid paying a docking fee. It depends whether you have a piracy reputation. If you have a piracy reputation, they might not want you to come into their space station. If they don't want you to come into it, maybe your option is to try and sneak in. So I'll go through each stage of the docking procedure. So if you have a reputation value of neutral or fame, then you can go to step 2, and that means that you would then so we'll go through that first, and then we'll assume that we've got a piracy rating and go through that. So the first we haven't got a piracy rating, so now we can go to step 2, and this says the space station's docking charges a docking fee of $5. You can either pay the docking fee and get a customs check, go to 4, or try and sneak through. So if we wanted to land at this space station, the easiest thing for us to do is to pay the $5 docking fee. So I'll go ahead and pay the $5 docking fee, and then we get to do a customs check. Now if you haven't got any contraband, or you haven't got any of these fugitives on board, i.e. you're not carrying any illegal goods and you're not transporting illegal passengers, you don't need to worry about making a customs check, because you will automatically pass it anyway, and you can go straight on to the planetary phase. So in this instance, because I'm not carrying fugitives and I've not got any contraband, I can go straight on and start playing the action phase of the at the planet. If I had piracy, what I would need to do is I would need to make a piracy check, and to do that, what I would do is I would look at the value here. Let's say I had a piracy value of 4. I would then need to roll 1d6 equal or below 4. If I did do that, then they wasn't very happy that I was trying to land at their space station. So if I rolled my piracy or less, they would try and block me landing at that space station. And what I would have to do then is, if I was adamant that I wanted to land, I could try and sneak through. So if I didn't want to try and sneak through, if I took it as being refused, I would move back to this space. If I decided that I wanted to sneak through, what I would have to do is do a sneak test, and to do that I would need what's called a sneak hide test. I would call out a number between 1 and 6 and I would roll 3d6. If the number called out is on any of the dice that I've rolled, I would be cool. So let's say I was trying to sneak past customs because they refused me entry to the planet. I would call out, say, number 2. Now, I haven't rolled a 2, so I managed to sneak through. By sneaking through, I can then manage to dock, and then I can go straight to a customs check. Now, if I'm not carrying any contraband or fugitives, I can then just basically pass and go through. So even though I had a piracy value, I would be able to dock, and then I would be able to go through to the action phase and start using the facilities at the planet. If I did have some customs, I would have to perform the customs hide test, which is basically exactly the same as the sneak test, but it's for a different cause. So let's say I did have some contraband on board, and I'm going to call out a number between 1 and 6. I'll call out 2. So because I haven't rolled a 2, I've actually passed my customs test. They'd failed to find the contraband that I was smuggling into the port, and then I would be able to then begin the action phase. Had they caught me at that stage, I would get issued a £10 fine. I would get 1 space piracy, and then I would be moved back into the space from where I came from, i.e. ejected from the spaceport. So you can see that if you've got a lot of fame, you can be quite restricted, and if you're particularly bad and you want to transport fugitives and contraband, which do yield a better value for a better reward when you do that, the risk involved is that you might have trouble landing in ports and also getting fined and so forth. With that said, I think we'll move on to the action phase. So while you're at the action, during the action phase, the planet actions that you can perform, the number is based on your fame value. So if you've got a high fame, there's a good chance that you'll land and people will be welcoming you, and you will be regarded as famous within the galaxy, and they will be wanting to use your time to have interviews and publicity, and the news will be reporting on you and so forth. So what you would do is you would make a similar check to your piracy check. You would roll 1d6, and if you rolled equal or below, then your fame value, your time is taken up, and you only get to take 2 actions. So if we had 3 fame and we rolled below our fame value, then we are in effect being hassled by fans and so forth, and we would only get time to do 2 actions. Okay, so I hope that explains different options for landing in the spaceport. If it's still a bit confusing, put some questions in the message thing at the bottom, and I'll try and clarify that a bit more, but I think we've pretty much covered that. In this instance, I'm going to have 3 actions. So a way to make sure that you remember what actions you've taken and so forth, how the number that you've taken, I like to put down 3 player tokens and then spend them. So each one represents an action point that I'm going to spend. Okay, so now I'm going to perform a buy and sell action. So when you do this, if you've got goods in your hold, you can sell them, and if you've and on each of these planet markers there's values for different types of cargo that you can carry. So I'll just show you on this one. You can see a list of items and values. You've got things like ore and plasma and titanium and fuel and shields, and so these are what you're gonna, these are costs, these are dollars that you're going to receive or you're going to have to pay out. There's also a traveller and a fugitive value as well. So if you're transporting travellers and fugitives to this port, to the port, you will get the money that's shown there, and the rest is contraband and resources, and then like I say, you've got your fuel and your shields that you'll pay to stock up on fuel. So we can use this guide on the left here, and it says that buy and sell uses up 1 action. So I'm going to use that action up, and I'm going to sell all of my titanium. Now at the Aclara system, titanium pay 8, so I will get 8 for each one that I sell. So that's going to be $32. So I take 32 from the reserve, and that's completed that. So the next thing, while I'm on this phase, I might like to buy some cargo. So when you're selling, what you need to do is you need to look at values that you can buy cheaply and places where you can sell them for a profit. And you need to look where they're positioned, because you don't want long space trips to actually get across the galaxy to make that profit. So you want to try and set up a bit of a trade route. So if there was something that was if there was a low priced item here and I could sell it expensively here, I can make some money, and that would be my trade route. I would choose to go that way. So let's have a look. Space junk is 2, space junk at Aclara is 2, at Frola it is 3, so that's a profit of 1. Ore is 3 at Aclara, ore is 2 at Frola, so that's a negative of 1. Plasma is 4 at both ports, and titanium is 8 and 6. So there's nothing that I can really trade from Aclara to Frola other than space junk, and I'm not sure that I really want to go to Frola next. I might do another titanium run and try and do a mining op there, but so I won't actually buy anything, I don't think, at this stage. I think what I'll do now is I'll move on to the passenger phase. So you can perform this once during the turn, during the action phase, and what that means is that you get to roll a d6 to find passengers, and passengers are going to get placed in these spaces. Okay, and they'll either be travellers or fugitives. Your cabin space is the number that the maximum number of passengers that you can board on your planet, in your cabins. And so what you do is you roll one blue die, and you're looking for the numbers that are linked to these different planets. So for instance, the Hihari system is 1, Bras 963 is 2, Cyphus is 3, Dispui is 4, Aclara is 5, and Frola is 6. So all these different planets have got a value. We roll this. If we roll the planet that we're at, which is Aclara, it means there's no more passengers available to board. So I'm going to roll this. As long as I don't roll a 5, there's a passenger available. 2. So I've got a passenger looking for the Bras system. So I'm going to go ahead and add that passenger, and I get to choose whether they're a fugitive on that side of the token or whether they are a traveller that side of the token. So I'm going to choose a traveller because I don't want to draw a lot of attention to myself at this stage, and I place that on the planet Bras 963. So that concludes the passenger phase. I could roll for more and see if there's any more passengers that could be available, but I won't on this occasion. And basically, for as many spaces as you've got available in your cabin, if you had a Class E ship, your cabin space is 4, so you could carry on rolling this die until you filled up all your cabin space if you wanted. I will go ahead and roll another one. You can get a bit unstuck. I really should have taken the missions phase first. But never mind, let's see what happens. 4. So I've actually got someone looking for the Despui system, so I'll go ahead and add them as well. Okay, so that concludes my passenger phase, and it doesn't use up any action points, which is quite good. Now you've got something called the Starship phase. You can perform that once. It costs you 1 action, and basically it means you can buy or sell your spaceships. You could buy a new spaceship if you had the money, and you could sell one. So you could sell your current ship and so forth. Tech upgrades. If we could afford any of these tech upgrades and the number that is in that value there, tech upgrades you can perform once, so you would have to spend one of your action points, and then you could choose 1 tech, and you're governed by the amount of tech that your ship can fit. So smaller ships can only gain 2 tech. Can only gain a certain number of tech. In our case it's Starship Class B, so we could only take on board a maximum of 2 tech, and you only get to add 1 tech per turn. So in that tech upgrade we can perform it once, and we can add 1 form of tech. We couldn't sort of load our whole ship with loads of tech in 1 turn. And the same applies to crew. You can hire them once, it costs 1 action point. You choose which crew member you want to board on your ship. You would pay their hire fee initially, and that would get paid to the reserve, and then when we moved around the board and so forth, when we actually move from one planet to another planet, you have to then pay that hire fee again to pay for your crew member that you've had working for you. So crew can get quite costly if you've got a lot of crew on board. Okay, but they do help in combat situations, so sometimes it's worth, if you've got plenty of money, it's worth swallowing up the cost of keeping crew around and paying their cost. Okay, so I'm not going to do any of those that we've discussed, but I am going to do a fuel and repair. So fuel costs 1 at the Aclara system, so it costs 0 action points. But basically I want to buy some more fuel, so I want to top my fuel up to full, so that's going to cost me 4 fuel, $4 for 4 fuel. So I put $4 into the reserve, and that concludes that. If I take any shield damage in this turn, I could perform that as well. Okay, and lastly I'm gonna do a gaining missions. So you can have up to 3 face-up mission cards in front of you. You can draw, when you're at a planet, you can draw from the top mission deck to gain 1 mission card, and then you can either decide to keep it or discard it. And there are a couple, like this one for instance, that have got a take icon. If you draw that card during this stage, you have to take that card. You don't really get much of a choice. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw the top card and see what we get. So this is called People Are Gossiping Titanium Run. It's a fame, it's a good card, so we're going to gain fame from doing it. And it's called People Are Gossiping About a Sector in the Frola system that has used the last of its titanium and will pay a lot for a delivery soon. Drop off 1 titanium at sector F6 in 3 turns. So when you get one of these cards that says in 3 turns, and there's all instructions on how to work them, what you need to do is you need to place some player markers on that card. I'll just go through what it says. So okay, right, so when you take a mission that states it must be completed in a certain number of turns, you immediately place an equal number of player markers on the mission card. So it says it's usually going to be 3 turns. So you place 3 player markers on that card. At the start of each of your next and subsequent turns, you must remove 1 player marker from the card. When the last player marker has been removed from the mission card, you have until the end of the turn to complete the mission, or it's failed. When a mission has failed, you discard the mission card along with any cargo, passengers, contraband and resources, and any of your player markers that are on the board are also required if they are to complete the mission. Offloaded passengers will not be very happy, and you will need to pay them $10 each as a compensation gift, otherwise they leave your ship disgruntled and you gain 1 piracy. So in this particular case, it says drop off 1 titanium at sector F6. So F6 is the Froler system. That's the space we need to go to. I need to get there in 3 turns, so I'll keep that card, and it's worth 50. So I could go in my next turn, I could go there and mine some titanium and then come back to the Froler system in the following turn. That's going to use up 3 turns. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to, with my last action, I'm going to buy, I'm going to take the buy and sell phase again. Buy and sell costs 1 action, and I'm going to buy 1 titanium to allow me to complete that mission. So that's going to cost me the 8 that I got previously. So I need to return 8 to the reserve. So there's those. 8 goes in, and that concludes that action phase. Now it's the NPC movement. So I'm going to roll for them to see where they go. I've got 6 and 1. They go to 8, 8. So I move them over here to that place. That's number 8. Mark them with my ring. This will be because there's only me playing, I'm not going to do this in future turns. I'm just going to move the NPC marker, but strictly speaking you should place a ring on to say it's been moved. Okay, and then the second thing is the round cleared up, which is basically just removing the ring, and that's why I'm not going to do it in future turns. Okay, so now we're on to the next turn. So I move this along 1 space for the galactic event. I'm going to now perform a movement, and we're going to move there for 1 fuel. I'm going to do another move, so I've got to roll 3 or less. I've rolled 4. However, because I'm the green player, I get to re-roll a navigation test once per turn, so I need to roll 3 or less on this die. Okay, I've rolled a 6, which is a bit bad luck. I still get to move to that space, but it ends my turn with nothing more to do. Because I haven't done anything, I'm going to now have to look for an event card for an event. So I flip over this, and if it had an event icon I would look it up. It doesn't, so I get off a bit light on this particular occasion. So there's no event this turn. That concludes my movement on all my actions for this turn. So now I need to see where the NPC ship moves, and it's going to 5-4, which tells me it goes to D7. The Dispui system, which is this token here, was it 5-7? Hang on a minute. 4 and 5 is D7, sorry, so it goes there. And then we start a new turn. So I move the galactic event across 1, and now I'm going to do that first navigation test. Now I'm aiming for this space here. Now I've been forgetting to remove my tokens at the start of each turn. I should be removing those tokens. So I believe I've done that right. The first one was to move there and I failed, and then I've moved, so I think I'm on track there. I might have made a slight error in the amount of fuel that I've burnt. I'll have to go back and check that on the video. Okay, so now I'm in that position there. That was my free move. I now want to try and perform a hyper jump to get me to this space here, which is F6. So I need to roll 4 or less, and that's why you really want to be on, when you do hyper jumps, you really want to be on high valued numbers to try and do them, because if we fail we're going to take some damage. Okay, so I've rolled a 6, so I would not, I'm going to change my dice because I'm making some bad rolls there. I'm going to use my traveller rule. Once per turn I may re-roll navigation check, so I'm going to re-roll this die. Okay, and I failed again, so I actually take some random damage. I burn 1 fuel, and I have to move, I can still move 3 spaces, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and I need to roll for random damage. So my shield value, my defense value is 2, so I roll the red d6, and I'm looking at the random damage table here. I want to roll fairly low. So I've rolled a 3, so I take 30 damage, 30% damage. So that's 1, 2, 3. So I'm on 70% shield value now, and we do another turn. So you can, I'm having a bit of bad luck here. So let's have a look at the old NPC. That's going to 6-3, which is F4. So they're on to me. They're coming after me, and we move on to the next phase. So we got to turn over a new galactic event card. So let's see what this is. Asteroid map. So for a while the asteroid fields have been mapped and are removed from the board. So when that happens, that's quite a good thing actually, because normally when we land on an asteroid field we have to end our movement. By removing them from the board, they gain a navigation value of 5, and we can move through them in the same turn. So that's actually helped us out a bit, that, should we want to get across the galaxy. Okay, so I've got to remove this last token, so I need to get to F4 to complete this mission, and luckily I'm only 1 space away. I need to get to F6 in 3 turns, so I'm only 1 space away. So basically it's my free move. I get to spend 1 fuel and move to that space. Now that I'm at that space, I can follow the instructions on this card, and it says drop off 1 titanium at sector F6 in 3 turns. So by dropping off that titanium, although I don't get any money for that titanium, I do get $50, so I should take another 50 from the bank. And I also gain 1 fame, which I move my track back to the middle, and that one is now completed. I get to keep that. So I'm 1 away of completing this video and 10 away from completing the game. So let's see what happens. So I can do those on the move. I'm now going to head to the Frola system to look for some more missions. So I'm going to do a standard move. I've got to roll 4 or less. 6. So again I failed my navigation test. I'm doing really badly on my navigation test. I'm going to re-roll it for my free, for my special rule. And I've rolled a 2 in the outer column there, so that's a pass. I'll take that as a pass. So I get to move to this space here, and that burns 1 fuel. And again, because we're right next to where I want to go into the Frola system, there's no need to do another navigation test, so I just move straight in, and I'm going to pay the $5 to enter the port. I've got no contraband or fugitives on board, so I don't need to do a customs test. I don't get refused entry because my reputation's fine, so I can just land, pay the $5 dollars and then get straight on with the planet action phase. Okay, and in this case I'm going to put my 3 markers out, and I'm going to spend one straight away to do the missions. I want to see what next mission I get. So I flip this over, and it's quite an easy one actually. It's holidays. The ambassador Lars Fingerfin of the Ahari system requires safe passage home for a well-earned vacation. Add 1 traveller, then drop off 1 traveller at sector A3. Okay, so I'm going to accept that. It's a fame mission card. It pays me $40. I'm going to add 1 traveller. So that's now. Okay, so now I've got a bit of an issue here. I want to add that traveller, but I've got some passengers on board. And so what happens is I've got to offload a passenger. So, and they're going to be disgruntled because they can't get to the planet that they wanted to go to, and I've taken them on board. Okay, so if you are required to take on board cargo, resources or contraband and your ship is already at its maximum, you can sell resources or contraband to make room for the mission's requirements. This is compulsory for missions with the take action. If you do not have room for passengers, travellers or fugitives, you can make room by offloading only the ones not required for another mission cards you have. The offloaded passengers will not be very happy, and you need to pacify them with a $10 each compensation gift, otherwise they leave the ship disgruntled. Okay, so I'm going to actually offload this one to make room for my passenger there. I'm going to pay the 10. I don't really want piracy at this stage of the game, and he needs to go to A3, so I'm going to put him in one of these outer region spaces close to the Ahari system, and then that will allow me to know that that is for a mission card and not for the planet itself. And when you're offloading passengers, you've got to be aware of if they're linked with a with one of your mission cards, and a way to do that, it's not an official rule, but if you've got spare planet markers, player markers, you can always place one with that passenger to show that they're part of a mission. Okay, which is what I'm going to do there. So I'm going to place that player token next to that one to say that's part of my mission. And also the fact it's in and out of space signifies that it's part of a mission as well. And to make it easier for us and to know where we're going, I'm going to also place one on A3. So I'll find sector A3, and that's an indication that I need to get to that space as well. Now that's not a compulsory option, you don't have to do that, but just so that we know for this video, I'll place one there. So that's my target goal. I'm also now going to take a oh, I don't need to spend that. I'm going to buy some fuel. It costs 1 at the Frola system, and I'm going to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fuel. So that's 6. So I get 4 back. Okay. And now what do I do? So I've already spent 1 for the mission. I'm gonna see what's over at the I'm gonna have to do a stop on the way. I won't have enough fuel to get over there, so let's have a look. I could do with repairing my shields actually. So shields cost 4, 4, 8, 12. That's going to cost another 12. So I'll repair my shields for 12. Okay. Right, so what can we transport to Cyphus? So 3 space drunk, 2 ore, 5 ore. Okay, so Frola I can buy for 2 and I can sell it at Cyphers for 5. Plasma's 4 and Titan Plasma 6 there, so that's only a gain of 2, whereas ore's a gain of 3. Titanium is 6 and 4. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to buy some ore. So I'm going to buy 4 lots of ore, which is going to cost me 8. So that's another 10. I'll get 2 change, and then I'm going to buy 1. What was it? Plasma. So I'm going to buy 1 plasma for 4. So there we go. I got $4 there. Okay, and that's filled up my hold. I can't, even if I wanted to, I couldn't buy any more items as so that's filled me up. And now I might put some tech on. I've got $150 and I would quite like to pass my hyper jump tests every time. So there's a thing called advanced navigation, automatically pass hyper jump navigation tests. So I'm going to fit some advanced navigation equipment to the ship, and that's going to cost me $75. So I should pay 100. It's costing me 1 action point. Get 25 back. Okay, and then we put player markers on the advanced navigation to show that we've got that on board. Okay, and I think that will do for that. So what else have we got left to do? We could, you can see that I'm taking these actions in any order. It doesn't matter what order you take them in, but some of them can only be performed once. I think that's me done. I've done my buying and selling, I've done my missions, and I've done my tech upgrades. So that should have really used up all 3 of my action points. So that's the end of the turn, and good for me, I get to move this pawn here. We're moving on to the NPC phase, so let's see where they go. I've got 6 and 5, tells me to go to F7. Okay, so they go, move round to there, and now we begin a new turn. So I move this across here. Now let's see how far we get. So the first move, I'm going to move to there, that's 1. Going to make my navigation test, which I pass automatically. So that's another fuel that I've used. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to spend 1 to enter Cyphers. Again, I've got no negative, I've got no piracy, and I've got no contraband on board. So it's pretty straightforward. I just pay the 5 docking fee to the port, and I begin the this phase. So now I'm going to sell, I'm beginning the planet phase. So I'm now going to pay in 1 action point to perform the buy and sell, and I'm going to sell all of my ore, which gets me $20, and I'm going to sell my plasma for 6, which gets me $26 in total. Okay, 25, 6. I'm going to perform the passenger. I can't perform the passenger, so I've got too many passengers. I'm going to check for another mission, so that's another point spent, and I've picked up Titanium Scandal, and it's worth $75. And it says, a month ago a ship brought in a huge consignment of titanium into a dock in the Frola system, and on initial scans it seemed genuine. However, after a few days it started to melt down to sludge. Now all over the galaxy reports are coming in of fake titanium, and the authorities want it to stop. They have tracked down where they believe the titanium was mined and need a chunk for analysis. So at sector F1 add 1 cargo, then drop off 1 cargo at sector C4. Okay, So that's another one that I'll keep. And let's see, I've done a buy and sell, I've done a mission. I'm going to top up on my fuel. Costs 2 at this port, so that's 2, 4, 6. That's $6 into the reserve. What shall I do now? What shall I do now? I don't really want any more tech. I think I'm going to end my move there. I could buy some more. Yeah, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy some titanium for 4 and sell it at Despui. On the way, I'm going to go to this space here and perform my holidays. I'm going to drop off my traveller, Ambassador Lars Fingerfin. I'm going to drop him off to this space here. Okay, so titanium's going to cost me 4, so I'm going to buy 4 lots. That's 16. So I'll put 20 in and take 4 out. And that concludes my turn. So now we roll for the NPC. We've got 5 and 4, which is E5. So we're going to go to the Eclara system, E5. So good job there, far away from me. And we'll begin a new turn. Okay, I'm going to move to there. And now we're going to move our player in the movement phase. So we're going to go to that space there. That burns 1 fuel. I'm going to then do a hyper jump, and I automatically pass that because of my advanced navigation, so I can now go 1, 2, 3. I'm now going to do a navigation check, 4 or less. That's a bit better. So that burns 1 fuel to move there. And now I'm going to drop off my Lars Fingerfin for his holidays, and I get to gain 1 fame, $40 from the reserve. There's 4 there, and I drop off the passenger Lars Fingerfin, bid him farewell, and I get to keep that as my mission card towards my goal. So I've completed 3 missions in 7 turns. Okay, so I'm still doing my movement. I want to get to the ARI system. So I've got 4 or less. I'm going to do another navigation check. Rolled 5. I get to re-roll it once per turn, which I haven't done yet. I've got a 5 again, so I actually end my turn there, hovering on the edge of the spaceport. So let's see what happens to the NPC ship. Okay, so I've got a 4 and a 3. They go to D4. So they're hovering around, and now I begin a new turn. So I'm going to move here. We've got a galactic event. Planet attack. A random planet, roll 1d6 on the passenger destination track, is under constant alien attack. Ships can no longer dock at that planet. Flip the planet card token face down. So I don't want it to be the ARI system, because that's where I want to sell my titanium, my plasma. Actually, I think I made a mistake there. Titanium. Did I move the wrong track when I was at Cyphus? No, I bought titanium. I'm going to sell it at Despui, that's right. Okay, so it doesn't really matter as long as it's not Despui. Okay, and I've also... Okay, yeah. Okay, 1. So it is the ARI system. So it's this one. Okay, so we flip that one over, and we will mark that with one of these player markers as A. Okay, so now we know that's where these come into play, because it tells us that this is still the A system, and we can use that for referencing on mission cards and so forth. Okay, well, what that's done is we've actually finished that turn. Oh, we're starting a new turn, aren't we? Yeah. I'm just going to head over to here and perform this phase in the next after this video has been concluded. But I did want to just describe how space combat works. So I've achieved what I wanted to do for this demonstration video. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. I'm just going to do a quick thing to show you how combat works. What I want to do is I'll move the NPC pawn to there. I'll place that there as a reminder, because I'll probably carry on and play this game after we've done this video. So when you start on a space with a starship with an NPC, or if you move into a space, you halt your movement until it's been dealt with. In normal circumstances, what would happen is you would be given a choice. Do you want to attack that NPC starship? If you don't, then the NPC starship, you make a check for that to see whether the NPC starship will attack you. And the check, I'll just clarify this, I'll look it up just to make sure I'm telling you right. What you would do is you would roll, you would call out two numbers between 1 and 6. So if we was there and we didn't want to attack that NPC, we would call out two numbers. Let's say we called out 1 and 6 to make it easy. Then we would roll the die, and if we rolled 1 or 6, let's say we rolled a 6, 1 or 6, then the starship would attack us, and they would prepare their weapons to attack, and then we would begin a space combat. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do a space combat. Okay, so the space combat is fairly straightforward. There's a few little tweaks to a space combat that you need to observe. As soon as you enter combat with one of these NPCs, if it's from a mission card, it will give you all the details for the NPC that you will encounter, and it will give you a ship class, either A, B, C, D or E, and it will tell you how much their shields are, their shield value is. So because it's NPC pool, we need to generate that, and we do that by using the NPC class, shield and data type. So we use this chart here. I'll find that in the rule book, and then we can look at it a bit closer up. So we're using this one at the bottom here, which shows us the red and blue dice. So you roll a red dice and a blue dice, and we've scored 3 and 1. So we look up the red 3 on the 1, and it tells us that we are in combat with a Class A starship with 80% shields. So what you would do is you set your shield tracker to 80%, and then we use all the values on the starship track for starship A. So that's how we determine our starship that we're going to be fighting. So the next thing is you need to work out who initiated the attack. In this instant it was the NPC starship, so they're going to attack first and we're going to defend. Now in combat, the attacker, in and around of combat, the attacker is the only piece that is going to deal damage. And when you defend, even though you might defend off the attack, you will not suffer, you will not be able to deal damage. So that's quite important, and that will become a bit more clearer as we play through the round. So we'll start off with the first round, and that is whoever attacked makes a targeting check by rolling 1 red d6. So we roll the d6, and whatever the result is their result. And so what we do is we will add to that number the number of crew that is on board the ship, i.e. the crew will be assisting in the attack some way, in some capacity. So because we've rolled a 1 and the NPC starship, for NPC starships they're always carrying a maximum number of crew. So whenever you encounter them, they've always got the maximum crew on board that they can carry. So in this case we're fighting an A class ship, and so it says the maximum for an A class ship is 1, so you add 1 crew member to that die roll. So they have actually scored an attack value of 2. when we're going to make our defence roll now, and that is called a targeting check that we've just performed there. So that's their targeting check. We're now going to roll a piloting roll, which is the defender's dice roll, and that is the blue dice. So we roll that and we scored a 5, and then we check we haven't got any crew on board. So our result is 5. So we compare the two values. The attacker scored a total of 2, 1 plus 1 crew, and we scored a total of 5. So we've scored 5 as we have no crew. So we've beaten the attacker's attack score. So that now means that we take no damage. If the attacker was to score damage, then that would be a different story, and they would actually deal some damage to us. So all we've managed to do is defend off the attack. We don't do any damage back to the NPC ship. We've just managed to defend. Because we were successful at defending, we've got a choice. We can either stay and fight in another round of combat, or we can attempt to escape. Now when you attempt to escape, what you must be able to do is spend 1 fuel. So if you've got no fuel, you can't attempt to escape, because in effect you'll just be drifting away from the combat. So we would need to spend 1 fuel, and then we would need to make a navigation test. And if that navigation test is successful, then the combat comes to an end. We move our starship out of the space, and that would then end the combat. So that's how you escape combat. For this, I'm going to stay in combat. So we begin a new round of combat, and so now I will become the attacker. So I'm rolling the red dice for me now. So I roll that, and I've scored a 2. And the defender now makes their roll, and they've rolled a 5 plus 1. So they've beaten me. Now with NPC ships, when they defend, they don't ever escape. They will stay until they're either destroyed you or you've destroyed them. So in this instant, our attack failed, and the starship managed to dodge the attack. So now we're going to swap. So we're going to roll for the attack. We're going to start a new combat round, and we're going to attack for the starship. So we roll the dice again. We've rolled a 1. And so now I get to actually make my piloting check for a defence. And I've rolled 2, so that is now level peggings. 1 for the attack, for the targeting roll, plus the crew member, that's 2. And we have no crew members, so we're just rolling a flat out 2. So that's a standoff, nothing happens. And so now it is again my attack, and hopefully I'll start getting some good numbers and we can actually start dealing some damage. So let's have a look. Right, I've rolled a 6. Now when you roll a 6, for the very first 6 you roll, you get to roll it again. If I roll another 6, I don't get to roll that second 6 again. So for now I can roll again. So that's a 6, and I add another 6 to that. So my total is now 12. The NPC is going to make their piloting test, and again if they roll a 6 during a piloting test, they get to roll the dice again. Okay, so they've rolled a 3 this time. So 3 plus 1 is 4. 6 plus 6 is 12. So I now actually managed to damage the NPC ship. So now what you do is you look on this other table, which is all on the board, so you don't have to keep thumbing through the rulebook. And basically it's just there's no dice rolled involved in this. You just find the attacker's weapon value at the top here, and defender's defense value. So my attack, my weapons is 2, and the defense of the class A starship is 1. So I look 2 for defense 1, and it shows I deal 30 points of damage. So from 80 to 30, we take that down to 50. Okay, now we begin a new combat round, and this continues until either you decide to leave combat. If you was 2 players involved in this, either side could decide to leave combat during their successful defence check, and then we continue to deal damage down until either the NPC starship is destroyed, or our ship is destroyed, or they leave combat. Okay, so what we do now is, before we continue on with the battle, we'll just look at some of the ways that we can now we've got the basics down of how combat works, we can look at some ways that we can actually improve our ship with tech and crew. So we can put some tech on board the ship that's going to actually give us some bonuses. The first thing that we can look at doing is adding a defence array, and by adding a defence array upgrade, I've already placed some of these on already, but we had the advanced thing. So by adding a defence array, what we have now gained now is a +1 to our ship's defence value. So our ship's defence value for a class B ship is 2. It now goes up to 3. So all the while we're in combat, we've got a defence of 3. The next thing that we can add is a targeting sensor. So you can gain +1 to your ship's weapons in combat by adding a targeting sensor. So if we had the targeting sensor there, our ship's value would go up to 3. So if we look at the damage chart, we can see the benefits. At the moment we're dealing damage on that line there. So at when we attack a ship that's got a defence of 1, we deal 30 damage. But if we've got if they've got a defence of 2, then we're only going to be dealing 20 damage, and it drops down again there. If we was to buy that sensor, then we will effectively up 10% damage on some of our ships. So we can see that if we was to now attack a defence 2 ship, we're actually dealing 30% damage rather than 20% damage. So you get a slight little increase there. The next thing was our defence. So if our defence went up, if we was attacking a starship of say 2, our defence went from 2 to 3, then they would still be dealing the same amount of damage. But let's find out. Alright, so if we was dealing if we was being attacked by a starship with a weapons of 3, for instance, and our defence was 2, we would take 30% damage. But if we'd bought that defence array, then we would only be taking 20 points of damage. So we save ourselves 10% of damage. So there's a little tweak that you can get, and those bonuses, it says, are only, it clarifies this in this section, you only deduct and you only add them on when you're in combat. So when you take random damage, for instance, that defense array is not going to do anything to protect you. Okay, and then the next thing is these dice rolls that we're making, we can tweak them further by taking on some more crew. So already every crew member on board adds +1 to your targeting roll when you're attacking, and +1 to your defense roll to your piloting roll when you're defending. So now what you can do is you can employ a pilot. So if you've got a pilot on board, I'm going to put one on board just to demonstrate, then when we make our defense roll with the blue die, we add 1 extra because he's a pilot. So normally we would roll that, we would get 4 plus 1 crew member, so that would take it up to 5, but because he's a pilot, he also adds +1 to our pilot roll, so that 4 goes to 5 for the crew member, 6 because he's a pilot. When we attack with that setup, then we will only add in 1 for the crew member because he's not adding anything to the targeting roll, so that would be a roll of 3. Okay, and then there's also a scanner that we can employ. So if we add a scanner, then when we make a targeting roll, so that's with the red die is the targeting roll, we would roll a 3, we add 1 for the crew member, that would take it up to 4, but because he's a scanner, we also get to add 1 to our targeting rolls during combat, so that would then make that 5. 1 for the crew member and 1 for the targeting roll. He wouldn't impact the defense roll, so that would still be, let's try and roll something other than a 6, that would still be 5, but it would affect the targeting roll. So I hope that explains a bit of how that works. So right, what we'll do now is we'll get back to the actual combat and try and get to a point where we can conclude an actual combat result. So I attacked last time, so it's now the attack of the NPC. He's rolled a 2, We've got a defend off 2. We've rolled a 6 plus a 5 is 11. It's got 2 pluses, 1 crew member is 3. So we managed to defend. At this point, like we said before, we could try to escape. I'm quite confident that I could be able to take this ship out, so I'm going to stay in combat. And now we swap over. I become the attacker and he becomes the defender. So let's see what happens. Okay, I've got a 4 and he's rolled a 3, but a 3 plus his 1 crew member is 4, so it's actually level pecking, so nothing's going to happen this round. And we'll swap again, and you basically just keep rolling the dice. He's rolled a 6, 7, 8, 9 plus his 1, 10. That's 5, 6. I actually take some damage, and so we need to look on the damage chart again. So he dealt, he's got a weapons value of 1 because he's a class A starship, and you can get this pretty off pat unless it's modified. A, starship A, B, C, D, E, and then there's an opportunity for if you're peeking over a class ship E with techs and tech upgrades and so forth. So what we got, so he's got a 1 and our defense is 2. We take 20% damage. 1, 2. So I can afford to take another hit. I'm going to remove these so that it's not that confusing. I can afford to take another 2 hits before I have to worry about escaping. It's a bit of a risky situation at this moment, so I could do with really trying to wipe him out. Let's see what we do with our die roll. So I've got a 6, 7, 8, 9, and he's rolled a 5 plus 1 is 6. So I beat him there, and so I will deal him defense 2, 1, 30, another 30 damage. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then we swap over again. Okay, he's the attacker. Let's roll a 6, 7. Let's see what happens. Rolled a 3. So he's actually got a score of 8 against my 3, so I'm going to take the damage this time, which is another 20. Okay, so I can survive one more. I can't survive the next hit. So on the next hit, what will happen is we'll play it out and see what happens, but in effect it's a one-shot shootout now. I deal him 30 damage, so that would defeat him. He deals me 20 damage, and I'm on 0 at the moment, 0 shields. So when the NPC gets down to 0 shields, that's it, they're destroyed. When the player gets down to 0 shields, any further damage that they take will start being dealt to crew members or tech. So what you could do is, if I got struck again, if I had any crew members, each crew member I could discard, and that would save 10% of the damage. So in effect, now that my ship has got 0% shields, any further hits are going to start damaging my crew and blasting off pieces of tech that are on my ship. So I mean, killing a few crew members is going to be quite damaging if I'm relying on them in combat, and any tech that I've got that I'm relying in combat could be quite dangerous. So in this setup it is a one-shot shootout. So let's see what happens. I'm going to roll my attack die. I've rolled a 4, so I don't really want them to roll very high. They've rolled a 3 and a 4, which is a standoff. So now we're back to them attacking me. He's rolled a 5. I really need to roll a 6. They've got a 6 at the moment. I've got a 5. So I've actually been defeated there. So we'll explain what happens when a player is defeated. Okay. So under normal circumstances I probably would have chickened out a lot earlier and I would have taken my ship out of harm's way. But okay, I'm going to look this up. So when I've lost all of my shields, each 10% of further damage it sustains is removed as one crew, one upgrade or one crew member from the ship. When a starship has lost all of its shields and all of its crew and upgrades, it has been totally destroyed and the player has lost the game. Now, however, it can be agreed at the start of a game. So when you're playing amongst a lot of multiplayer game. It doesn't really apply too much for solo rules. So if players are destroyed in this way, they may start again with a new ship, as explained in step 6 of the game's setup, and at the start of their next turn they place their starship pawn on a planet. However, if a player would rather not begin again, they may choose an NPC ship to remove from the game and return it to the game box. Whenever a player destroys another player's starship in combat, they receive half its value in salvage costs, calculated from the values found on your player map. So what that's saying is that because we've been destroyed, because it's a solo game, basically that would be game over for me. If we was playing a multiplayer game, I could restart my ship again from section 6 of the setup guide. Now if I destroyed the NPC ship, if it was during a multiplayer game, if I did decide to restart again, I would remove an NPC ship from the board, and then that would set the level playing field. If I destroy an NPC starship, what would happen then is I would also receive half its value in salvage. So basically I'll blow the ship to smithereens and then scoop up all the bits that were left and take them and sell them. You get the cash instantly, so the moment the ship's destroyed you can add the cash to your cash pool, and you place the starship out of the game for the time being. And then during the NPC phase, the next player to take a turn would have to choose that one and place it on the board. So during step 5, any that are off the board need to be placed back on the board in the priority. So instead of choosing one around, you would have to choose that one. You would also get half its value in salvage costs. So at the moment it's a class A starship, so if I had blown it to bits, I wouldn't get anything, because they're not. It would have just completely destroyed and evaporated the starship. There wouldn't be much left of it. But the bigger ships, what would happen there is you would be able to claim half of that value. So there is a bit of an advantage if you can get your ships up and quite powerful. You can whip through the game and get yourself up to sort of a class D, C or D. C's not bad. D, you would be a bit stronger, preferably E, but you're talking about a lot of cash. You could get up to level D, whack on a couple of whack on a couple of these defense arrays and targeting scanners, take yourself off with a pilot and a scanner, and then just go around blasting all the NPCs to bits. That's one tactic you can play. If you do that, you're going to get a lot of piracy fairly quickly, so you could offset that by doing good things in the galaxy. So you could be collecting up all your blue mission cards, trying to do them as well as blasting things to bits, and that way you can get yourself you can offset the piracy that you're gaining with your good deeds. So there's lots of different tactics that you can employ in the game and work towards different objectives and different goals. So I think that pretty much concludes this video. It's a shame that I can't play through the whole game and put that up. It would take a lot of time and you'd have to watch it for probably a good couple of hours, so I won't force that upon you. But it's been fun doing the video. I hope you enjoyed the game, and please do tune in to any future videos that I do for my games. It's much appreciated, and if you can, like the video, that would be very helpful, or dislike it if you really don't like my presentation skills, and I couldn't blame you. You can always dislike it as well, but you know, all your feedback is warmly received, and thanks for watching. So take care, and until next time, bye for now.